My name is Stanley Sakupwanya, Member of Parliament, Manicaland Youth Quota. I got into Parliament at the 10th Parliament last year after the 2023 elections. Basically, my brief background is that I come from Zanu PF, and in Zanu PF, I'm the provincial chairman of Manicaland. So that together with my educational background, where I did my university study, my tertiary institution. I went to University of KwaZulu-Natal. That's actually where I started politics. I was the only international student at the time who was voted into the SRC. So it's from there that I got an interest in politics. I came back to Zimbabwe, joined the Zanu PF structures, rose up the ranks until I got to where I am. So that's me in a nutshell. Well, firstly, it's a great honor. It's a great honor to have the opportunity to serve your nation. It's a great honor to be one of the few who have the opportunity to sit in a body that makes the decisions that direct where the country is going to be. It's not something I take lightly. It's not something I take for granted. I know a lot of people who would have wanted to be in this position, but I'm appreciative of the fact that I've been given that opportunity, and that the opportunity was presented for young people, because it must be noted that this is the very first time that we've had a youth quota implemented in the Parliament of Zimbabwe. So that speaks volumes to where we're going as a country and our opportunities. Well, the youth quota in terms of the Constitution is the youth representation. There's one seat per every province. This was enacted and implemented in this 2023 election, where from each province, based on the amount of votes from each party, one youth member then gets into Parliament via proportional representation. So it's a first of its kind. You have to be under 35, which means it's specifically targeted at the youth. The whole idea is that at the bare minimum, we have youth representation, and it's a standard. So, it's a start, and it's a great start that Parliament has finally recognized the need for youth voices in Parliament. Of course, we've had the women's quota, and we appreciate that it's not just the youth quota, but even in the women's quota, the Constitution states that the women's quota of the 66 of the 60 seats, 10 of them need to be under 35. So youth quota is not just us who go in through the general youth quota, but as well the women's quota, which caters for 10 who are under 35. So that, I think, is the idea of youth representation at a bare minimum. Our population, as everybody knows, we have more than 60% of the population being represented by youth. And when we talk about industry, when we talk about Vision 2030 as espoused by President Mnangagwa, all those things are not possible if you don't have the youth, because the youth are the ones who work in the industry. If you talk about artisanal mining, it's the youth that are ones that are doing all the work. If you talk about you're growing the economy, the people who participate in the economy, the larger population is the youth. So it's very important that we have youth voices when policies are made. It's very important that when policies are being directed, because the biggest demographic that's affected are the youth. So without the youth voices, then you won't have able representation for things that you want to work in the country. Into youth quota, for example, it enabled the ability of the youth caucus. That's the first and most important thing, because Youth Caucus is now all MPs who are under 35 who are able to join and come together and advocate that policies that affect the youth. Now, when we're talking about the policies themselves, we're looking into things, for example, youth in housing, youth employment. We're talking about youth being able to be supported with their businesses, because obviously youth, when you're young, you're getting into whatever it is that you have learned and you want to experience, and you want to be able to start your business, or you want to be able to find a good job. Those are things that we were saying that the young need to be created a space for them through policy. And one of the policies that we're really pushing for in the youth, through the Youth Caucus, is the aspect of youth desk. with each ministry. You'd find that Ministry of Mines, Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Lands, Agriculture, Water and Fisheries, all of those ministries are supposed to have a youth desk that is functional. Meaning to say, if a youth wants to talk about land and access to land, they've got a desk within which they can find out all the information without having to necessarily compete with all other demographics of people who will be looking for the same. Even in business, small and medium enterprises should have a youth desk so that they'll be able to go there and say, look, as a young person, how can I take advantage of the policies that will favor me? So the youth desk is one thing that we're pushing for every ministry, so that it's easier for youth to access those ministries and whatever policies that are favoring towards them. So I think that's very important. Government is very particular about whatever it is that they do, what percent of that goes to the youth. I know right now, whenever land, if there's any land that's to be distributed, the lands ministry is persistent that there must be youth if there's any land that is to be allocated. That's if in the case that that does happen. I also know in terms of tenders or contracts, there's an encouragement that youth must also apply so that they can also attain. In mining, they're very specific to the idea that the number of mining licenses that go out, they are very specific to how many youth are applying, how many youth are accessing, so that we've got a demographic that we have statistics that say that youth are actually benefiting. So this is very important. I will also allude to the fact that obviously funding for youth through the Empower Bank and those type of things are what we look at in terms of youth empowerment and youth benefits. So yeah.
Honorable Sakupwanya, the issue of drug and substance abuse is a menace now, and we have heard the President talking in these terms about the drug and substance use among young people. What are you doing, or what are you going to do in the 10th Parliament as young people to advocate for the reduction of this issue?
Well, I'm actually happy that you raised that, because it's a debate that's ongoing in Parliament right now. Obviously, we have to appreciate and acknowledge the efforts by President Mnangagwa, the setting up of the drug task force, which has decentralized teams in every province. One big aspect that we have to understand is tackling the drug and substance abuse aspect is in three phases. It's first from a preventative aspect, and preventative, we're talking about ensuring firstly that the youth are active, because it's when the youth that are idle that they start engaging in these harmful substances. So making sure the youth are active, whether it's through sport, whether it's through employment, whether it's through projects. So that comes about from an empowerment aspect. Then there's the aspect of curbing in the sense that, with our police, we're trying to encourage that they get enough support so that through the borders, our borders are not open to smuggling of these drugs, because these drugs are not manufactured here. They're imported through your Mozambican border, your Zambian border, South African border. So it's a matter of making sure that they are stopped from coming into the country. That's very important, and our police need a lot of assistance in terms of that. Then on top of that, there are policies that we're pushing towards. For example, our big challenge is we are trying to push for a mandatory sentence for drug peddlers, so that we stop the distribution of these drugs and harmful substances to our youth. But also, from a correctional perspective, the aspect of rehabilitation is a thing that we're trying to push to ensure that we have enough rehabilitation centers. The more the rehabilitation centers that are coupled with vocational training centers means to say, once you go through drug rehab, you're not just rehabilitated, but you are assimilated back into society through training of skills that keep you away from being idle. So those are some of the things that we are trying to push, and we're trying to encourage our government to implement so that we curb the abuse of drugs and harmful substances. On that note, I must also add that one thing that's usually overlooked is alcohol. In this aspect, I'm talking particularly about those that are known as tumbwa, mukozodo. Those are very harmful because they are small packaged, they are very high percent in alcohol content, and maybe we're trying to lobby to say, look, for the high percentage alcohol, especially these small ones, they are really affecting our youth. They're affecting their ability to work, because once you get onto drugs, you don't have motivation to work. If you are studying, you won't study, you're ineffective. So those things is something that we're looking to as Parliament to say, how can we curb the spread of those harmful alcoholic substances? Because obviously alcohol is a luxury and it's not a crime to drink alcohol, but when it's abused, especially in that light, those are things that then affect our youth and their ability to be productive.
Thank you so much, Honorable Sakupwanya. Time in other thing that you want us to know what's happening in the 10th Parliament with regards to youth voting.
Okay, no, with the Youth Caucus, one thing I appreciated about it is that we bring together youth from all spans. We are only as effective as our ability to engage with the youth. So we as young parliamentarians definitely like to engage with a lot of youth, whether in business, whether in agriculture, whether in employment. So, you know, the one important thing that I have realized being in Parliament is that this job is not mine alone. It takes many to make it work. And as much as we as government might want to implement policies, or youth might want to implement policies, the policies will only be effective if the Zimbabwean young people come together and say, let's make our country work. And that really is the most important thing for me. So we encourage youth whenever we have functions where we engage with youth for them to attend so that we can have this engagement. In Parliament itself, the Youth Caucus is a culmination of different political parties coming together. You'd find that when we're in Parliament at that point, you're not wearing your political jacket, but it's about the country first. So it's something that we encourage our youth to think about the country first. When you're doing your production, that GDP that you contribute to is for the country, not just for yourself. So we encourage a lot of our youth to help us to keep coming with the contributions, to keep working, so that if you work, then I work, then the country will move forward. So I thank you.
Lastly, Honorable Sakupwanya,
Yeah.
you mentioned that you are coming from a Zanu background.
Yes.
And you mentioned that now that you're in Parliament,
Yeah.
that jacket is off, is going to represent young people. What measures or what are you going to do to ensure that you also touch young people that are not from within the
You see, what we are able to differentiate between political times and developmental times. Of course, in the build-up to the elections, it's political because you're pushing your agenda to say what it is that we are going to do when we get into government from the party, because the party is what directs us. It's where we direct and share our vision, as we in ZANU-PF have shared our vision of 2030 and trying to build the nation. And now that you're in government, it's now to say, look, the president is there, it's President Nangagwa, the MPs that are there are the ones that are there, let's move with the vision of the government of the day. And the government of the day's vision is set by the ruling party, which is the situation that we cannot avoid. So we're working with that vision right now. Everything is about development, because when development happens, it doesn't select to say, are you ZANU-PF or are you opposition? When prices go up, which is something all of us don't want, prices don't go up for a certain select few. They go up for everybody. So we are working hard and tirelessly to ensure that Vision 2030 does happen, because when it happens for everybody. So it's an encouraging thinking about the best that have that we have cut down our youth, our